The UFC is going to close out another big year with a championship doubleheader set to shake the foundations of the mixed martial arts world. In the main event, UFC welterweight champion Leon "Rocky" Edwards will attempt to hold off the charge of Colby "Chaos" Covington in a highly anticipated showdown at 170 pounds. Plus, Alexandre Pantoja will risk his UFC flyweight championship for the first time in a rematch against surging rival Brandon Royval. Pantoja is the Brazilian beast who has been dominating the UFC since 2016. He is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a former RFA flyweight champion. He has a professional record of 26 wins and 5 losses, with 14 wins by submission and 4 by knockout. He became the UFC flyweight champion at UFC 290, when he defeated Brandon Moreno by split decision in a close and competitive fight that was awarded the Fight of the Night bonus. Pantoja is a well-rounded fighter who can finish his opponents on the feet or on the ground. He has excellent grappling skills, especially in transitions and submissions. He's also a dangerous striker with powerful punches, kicks, and elbows. He's not afraid to exchange with his opponents and often engages in wild brawls. However, he also tends to get hit a lot and can be vulnerable to counterattacks. He sometimes loses focus and makes mistakes that cost him rounds or fights. On the other hand, Royval is the American sensation who has been making waves in the UFC since 2020. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a former LFA flyweight champion. He has a professional record of 15 wins and 6 losses, with 11 wins by submission and 2 by knockout. He earned his title shot at UFC 296 by defeating Matheus Nicolau by first round TKO at UFC on ABC 2, snapping Nicolau's 4-fight winning streak. Royval is an explosive and dynamic fighter who likes to push the pace and pressure his opponents. He's very creative and unpredictable, both on the feet and on the ground. He throws a variety of strikes, such as spinning attacks, flying knees, and elbows. He's also very adept at finding submissions from different angles and positions. He's not afraid to take risks and go for the finish, even if it means putting himself in danger. The first fight between Pantoja and Royval took place at UFC on ESPN 29 on August 21, 2021. The fight was expected to be a fast and furious affair, and it lived up to the hype. The first round was a back-and-forth battle, with both fighters landing hard shots and attempting submissions. Royval started the fight aggressively, throwing spinning kicks and flying knees. Pantoja responded with crisp combinations and leg kicks. Royval then scored a takedown and tried to lock in a guillotine choke, but Pantoja escaped and reversed the position. Pantoja then landed some heavy ground and pound and looked for an arm triangle choke, but Royval defended and got back to his feet. The round ended with both fighters exchanging punches and elbows in the clinch. The second round was more dominant for Pantoja, who took control of the fight with his superior grappling and striking. Pantoja landed a hard right that stunned Royval, and then followed up with a takedown. He quickly moved to Royval's back and secured a rear naked choke. Royval tried to fight off the choke, but he was too hurt and had to tap out at 1 minute and 46 seconds of the round. Pantoja celebrated his victory and called out the champion Moreno, who was in attendance. Royval was disappointed and respectful, and praised Pantoja for his performance. Now the rematch between Pantoja and Royval will be the co-main event of UFC 296, which will take place at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas on December 16, 2023. The main event will be a welterweight title fight between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. For Pantoja, the rematch will be an opportunity to prove that his first win over Royval was not a fluke. He will also look to cement his legacy as a champion and set up a potential trilogy fight with Moreno, who he has split 2 fights with in the past. For Royval, the rematch will be a chance to redeem himself and show that he has learned from his mistakes. He will also look to fulfill his dream of becoming a UFC champion and to shock the world with an upset victory. In terms of strategy, both fighters will likely make some adjustments and improvements from their first fight, but they will also stick to their strengths and styles. Pantoja will probably try to use his striking and grappling skills to wear down and finish Royval, while avoiding his wild attacks and submissions. Royval will probably try to use his speed and creativity to surprise and hurt Pantoja while avoiding his power and pressure. The fight could go either way, depending on who lands the first big shot or secures the first dominant position. However, based on their previous fight and their overall skills and experience, Pantoja has the edge over Royval. Pantoja will be able to handle Royval's aggression and unpredictability, and will be able to exploit his openings and mistakes. Now in the main event, we've got the welterweight clash of titans, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. The welterweight title is on the line as the champion Leon Edwards defends his belt against challenger Colby Covington. Leon Edwards is the reigning welterweight champion, having defeated Kamaru Usman twice by decision, once in 2019 and again in 2023. He's currently on a 12-fight winning streak and the longest in the division's history. He has a record of 21 wins and 3 losses, with 6 knockouts and 3 submissions. Edwards is a well-rounded fighter with excellent striking, wrestling, and grappling skills. He is known for his high fight IQ, patience, and composure. He is adept at controlling the distance and the pace of the fight using his jabs, kicks, and footwork. He can also switch stances and angles, making him unpredictable and hard to hit. He has a strong clinch game where he can land elbows, knees, and takedowns. He's also a solid grappler with good takedown defense, scrambles, and submissions. Some of the strengths of Edwards are his jab. Edwards has one of the best jabs in the division, which he uses to keep his opponents at bay, set up combinations, and disrupt their rhythm. His jab is fast, accurate, and powerful, and he can vary the speed and timing of it. He can also double or triple up on his jab, or use it as a feint. His jab is especially effective against pressure fighters, who struggle to close the distance and land their own shots. Edwards is a versatile fighter who can adapt to different situations and opponents. He can fight in both orthodox and southpaw stances, and switch between them seamlessly. He can also mix up his strikes using punches, kicks, elbows, and knees. He can fight at range, in the pocket, or in the clinch. He can also wrestle and grapple, both offensively and defensively. He has shown the ability to adjust his game plan during the fight, depending on how the fight is going. Edwards has excellent cardio, which allows him to maintain a high output and pace throughout the fight. He rarely gasses out or slows down, even in 5-round fights. He can also recover quickly from damage or adversity, and keep his composure. His cardio gives him an edge over his opponents, who often fade in the later rounds. But he has some weaknesses, like his lack of finishing ability. Edwards has a low finishing rate with only 10 finishes in 25 fights. Before his knockout of Kamaru Usman in August 2022, he had not finished a fight since 2018, when he knocked out Peter Sabata. He tends to rely on his technical skills and point fighting style, rather than going for the kill. He often wins by decision, which can be risky, especially in close or controversial fights. He also does not have a lot of power in his hands, which makes it harder for him to hurt or stop his opponents. Plus, Edwards has a tendency to get cut in his fights, which can affect his vision, performance, and the judges' scorecards. He has suffered cuts in several of his fights, such as against Donald Cerrone, Gunnar Nelson, and Kamaru Usman. His cuts are usually caused by elbows, which he is vulnerable to in the clinch or on the ground. His cuts can also make him bleed profusely, which can be a psychological factor for him and his opponents. The opponent, Colby Covington, is the former interim welterweight champion and the #1 contender for the title. He is a 2-time title challenger, having lost to Kamaru Usman by TKO in 2019 and by decision in 2021. He has a record of 17 wins and 3 losses, with 4 knockouts and 4 submissions. Covington is a relentless pressure fighter with exceptional wrestling, cardio, and durability. He's known for his trash talk, controversy, and polarizing persona. He often provokes and insults his opponents, fans, and the media using political, racial, and personal remarks. He has a loyal fan base, but also a lot of haters and critics. Covington is a former NCAA Division I wrestler and one of the best wrestlers in the division. He has a high-level wrestling pedigree, technique, and experience. He can take down almost anyone and keep them down with his top control and ground and pound. He never stops moving, striking, or wrestling, and he does not get tired or slowed down. He can also take a lot of damage and keep fighting, as he showed in his fights with Usman and Robbie Lawler. He's not afraid of anyone, and he does not back down from a challenge. He believes he's the best fighter in the world, and he acts like it. He also uses his trash talk and mind games to get under his opponent's skin, and to get into their heads. But Covington has a questionable chin, which makes him vulnerable to knockouts. He has been rocked and dropped in several of his fights, such as against Usman, Lawler, and Rafael dos Anjos. He has also been finished by TKO once, by Usman in their first fight. He tends to leave his chin exposed and his hands low, which makes him an easy target for his opponents. He also does not have a lot of head movement or footwork, which makes him a stationary and linear fighter. Both fighters have different styles and approaches, which can make for an interesting and exciting fight. These are some of the possible strategies that each fighter can use to win the fight. For Edwards, uses jab and kicks to keep Covington at bay and to disrupt his pressure and rhythm, switch stances and angles, and use feints and counters to confuse and catch Covington off guard, avoid the clinch and the takedown, and use his takedown defense and scrambles to keep the fight standing. Target Covington's chin and body, and look for openings to land power shots and combinations. Stay calm and composed, and do not let Covington's trash talk and antics get to him. For Covington, close the distance and pressure Edwards, and do not let him get comfortable or set up his strikes. Uses wrestling and takedowns and mix them up with his strikes to take Edwards down and control him on the ground. Uses ground and pound and submissions and look for opportunities to finish Edwards or inflict damage and cuts. Maintain a high pace and volume and do not let Edwards rest or recover. Uses trash talk and mind games and try to get under Edwards' skin and make him emotional or angry. Well, UFC 296 is a highly anticipated event featuring a welterweight title fight between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington.